All right, folks, it's time for world politics. We're going to see what's going on in the world and all along those lines because we've got interesting things taking place and all in the world. And of course, we've got an election getting ready to come up in less than a month, November 5th, and all in that space. So definitely, folks will be getting ready for that election on Tuesday in November. And of course, folks are excited on both ends of the campaign. As a matter of fact, I saw a friend of mine that has been on our show in the past, Jan Cromartie, and he was actually, because I did not realize this, I should have realized this, but sometimes campaign workers are not just sent into their respective cities and states because he's a member of the Democratic Party and done a lot of work around here in Durham, North Carolina, but they shipped him off to Wisconsin. So he said he's going to be in Wisconsin knocking on doors and trying to get folks to vote for his side of the politics and all along those lines. I'm sure others will be doing the same for the Trump camp and all along those lines. But I was not expecting him to tell me that he was in Wisconsin. But we have a friendly rivalry because he is a UNC graduate and he knows that I am a Marquette graduate. So he was glad to go to Wisconsin and show and flash the Marquette symbols to me and let me know that he had been there on the campus that I went to sometime back in the early 80s and all along those lines. One of the criticisms that Kamala Harris has been having is not doing any interviews. Well, apparently she's trying to take that advice and actually go out there and do some interviews. And even though some people are complaining that they are softball interviews and that they are interviews with allies and all along those lines. So it'll be interesting to see what Adam's got to say about that. And we get any other guests, what they've got to say about it as well. But I do know that on Sunday, definitely Vice President and Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris sat down with CBS News correspondent Bill Whitaker. Actually, that was on Monday to discuss her policy positions on 60 Minutes. So definitely that was something that was going on and all in that space. So definitely a lot of folks were interested in what had to be said in that space. That's at least according to an article that I was reading in the Oklahoman and all in that kind of way. But apparently Republican nominee Donald Trump initially agreed to be interviewed. According to CBS, he later backed out and only Harris and her running mate Tim Walz appeared on the program in a break with more than a half a century of tradition. So CBS correspondent Scott Pelley said in the program's introduction that unfortunately last week Trump canceled, adding that the campaign offered shifting explanations. One of the issues Trump's campaign raised with this CBS would fact check the interview, according to Pelley. And addressing Trump's absence from the program, Harris repeated a debate tactic line and told viewers to watch his events. If he's not going to give your viewers the ability to have a meaningful, thoughtful conversation, question and answer with you, then watch his rally. She said you're going to hear conversations that are around himself and all of his personal grievances. So she did address some issues around policy and all along those lines. And I do see I've got somebody else that is joining the conversation. So she has some things to say about the Haitian migrant situation and all in that way, and definitely some things around divisiveness and all in that kind of space. So we'll see what folks have got to say because she also said something about Israel. And I heard some people, including some people on the right, that felt that the answer was what they described as a word salad. So apparently it was going all over the place and all along those lines. But I heard part of it and it made sense to me. But then again, maybe I was reading too much into it. But I'll be interested to see what Adam and others have to say. But the last thing I'll say, and then I'll bring in the folks to see what they've got to say about this. And I think earlier today she was on the Howard Stern show. And I'm never quite sure as to whether Howard Stern is liberal or conservative because he's kind of like Bill Maher. I think at one point he was one way and now he's gone another way. So I'm not sure which way he's going in this time and direction because it does seem like some of these folks that do these talk shows, particularly on talk radio, sometimes go on both sides of the fence. So it'll be interesting to see what folks have got to say about that or not. But like I said, she did sit down with what some people are saying, which is an ally, which was Howard Stern, and that interview took place earlier today. And I have not heard of that interview. To be perfectly honest, I didn't hear most of the interview with Kamala Harris, but I did read up on the interview as well. But she said that I believe that the people of America want a leader who's not trying to divide us and demean. I believe that the American people recognize the true measure of the strength of a leader is not based on who you beat down, it's based on who you lift up. And like I said, they did have some things to say about the October 7th attack because she said Israel has a right to defend itself and how it does so matters. Far too many innocent Palestinians have been killed, and she basically urged for the war to end and all along those lines. And she did also talk about immigration and grocery prices and a number of other things because even as Adam has said, a lot of people are worried about their pocketbooks and all along those lines. So I'm going to bring in Adam, see if you watched any of this interview or any of the Howard Stern interview. I've got his good buddy Sasha Starr with me as well, and we've got Jacoby joining us as well. But any thoughts about this conversation? Because one of the things that I know is the criticism of the Harris campaign was that she had not been doing enough media interviews, and now the new complaint is that she's doing media interviews, but they're with allies and not necessarily with people that will grill her as much as they would like her to be grilled and everything. But Adam, you definitely are in the space of media. You've been a debate coach. You've done a number of other things as well. So, what is your take on this switch in tactics and being actually doing interviews, and whether this is a good or a bad thing?
Kamala Harris is going to lose the election. The polls show that. The problem is that she's all style and no substance. And her media interviews amply illustrate that fact. In addition to that, if you look at the way she's interviewed versus the way that J.D. Vance and Trump are interviewed, it shows so evidently how biased the media is and how much they would like Kamala Harris to get elected. And that's not good for democracy. We need to really question our candidates on their qualifications and their policies and demand specifics, particularly when Kamala Harris has flip-flopped on so many positions, including fracking. So ultimately, what I see from Kamala Harris is she's got a great personality. She's really likable. But when you start to drill down on the details, they're just not there. And when you look at the fact that she's been in office for over 3.5 years, and you look at inflation, gas prices, grocery prices, housing costs, what's happened at the border, I think the American people are concluding that out of Trump and Harris, even though both are not ideal choices, Trump is the better of the two evils, and that's why he's leading in the polls and is favored to win the election.
And just really quickly before I get to the other folks that may have questions as well, but I did see two interesting YouTube videos earlier today and everything. One of them was talking about groups of people that he, meaning Trump, is gaining popularity in, and they did include a gain or a spike in popularity among African American males. That did include a spike, I think, among Latin voters and a spike among other voters. But there was a significant spike for Kamala Harris in terms of even bigger than what Biden had and Hillary Clinton had among a group that you are very familiar with, and all along those lines and everything, Adam. And that was college educated individuals. So folks that are college educated apparently are spiking heavily for Kamala Harris, and I don't know the reasoning for that. Maybe you've got some explanation as a college professor, but it does seem like there is a spike.
I do. I have an explanation. The explanation is this. There's a rise in support among African American males and Latino voters. And the reason is because what wins elections is the economy. People are going to vote based on their wallet and their pocketbook. When they look at groceries, gas prices, housing prices, they see the American dream is quite elusive, and they see that Harris and Biden have done a very poor job. Now, among younger people, college-educated people, younger people, and I teach them, tend to be very idealistic. Many of them have not gotten a paycheck yet and seen those taxes taken out of their paycheck. And once they grow up, they tend to become more conservative. But as far as the polls go, the polls show Harris with a slight lead, but you have to take into account the fact that the polls and often the samples are biased. And you saw that in the 2016 and 2020 polls, where, for example, Biden was up about 8 points in Wisconsin and won it by, 30,000 votes. When you take into account the polling error, the fact that Harris is up by a fraction suggests that she's going to lose by between 3 and 5 points in the battleground states.
Okay. Sasha, you had a question, and I see we've also been joined by Rick. Jacoby stepped away, but hopefully he'll be back. He's back. But Sasha, you had a question?
Yes, Adam, I have a question for you. Adam, you look like intelligent man, and hopefully your look is not deceiving. Hopefully you are intelligent man. Explain to me then, why are you repeating this horrible narrative, Republican narrative, that the economy, the prices at the gas pump, what prices at the gas pump? They went down 50% in the last few months. The groceries are widely available. You can just choose and pick any groceries you want and pay a fraction whatever you would pay a year and a half, 2 years ago. It's now coming all down. So if you really think that Trump has a chance to win the election, it's not economy, stupid. No, it is not economy. And it's not border issue. Not at all, because as soon as Republicans open their mouth and talking about the border, they're murderers, they're this or that, they're idiots. America need immigrants, legal or illegal, it doesn't matter. It needs immigrants because they are hard-working people. Even those murderers, they are also hard-working people, and they are building economy. American native people cannot work. They have no desire to work. The best students in schools, it's evident by now, are Chinese students, are the Asian students, and believe it or not, Russian students. They are people who are getting the highest marks, and they're going to universities. They're going to become doctors. They're going to become well-paid professionals. Not Americans. It's erosion of American white people. They cannot compete with the best. Therefore, they will go to flip hamburgers at McDonald's. They will be reduced next to nothing. The only way how Trump can win, there is only one issue that he can beat Kamala. That's a foreign policy. That's where you have to concentrate your efforts, your narrative, because that's where Kamala is extremely weak. And not only her, it's all Biden administration. So that's what you can score points. That's how you can win election. It's tangible. It's real. You can compare policies on the Middle East, on Ukraine, on just everywhere all across the globe, and you will see that Trump has a definite advantage, and it's very, very difficult for Kamala and what's his name, Biden, to say otherwise, because all the records, everything is show how their foreign policy fails. That's where Trump can win it, nothing else.
Well, I'll respond to that, and then Rick and Jatovi should be speaking.
Okay.
First of all, when you begin a question by saying that someone looks intelligent and you hope they're not being deceptive, that might not engender a favorable response, but I'm going to be mature about this, and I'm going to respond to the substance of your question. 3 reasons why I'm voting for Trump and did not vote for him in the last 2 elections. Number 1, I went to the grocery store yesterday and I spent over $200 on groceries. I spend an average of over $1,000 on groceries. I went to the gas pump, and I was paying $3.50 a gallon. Maybe the prices have gone down a bit over the last 3.5 years, but they've been high consistently throughout. Number 2, while I like Kamala Harris as a person, I think she's a nice person, has a great personality. She has flip-flopped on nearly every issue and is so fundamentally dishonest and quite shallow in her responses, as you see in these interviews, that I don't believe she's competent to be the commander-in-chief. And the third reason is the one that you provided. On foreign policy, I trust Trump more than I trust Harris. And for those reasons, but most importantly, the economy, I have spent so much money over the last 3.5 years. And when I see that, when I see the border and foreign policy, I think the lesser of 2 evils is Donald Trump.
Right. So in 2016 and 2020, the Dems did underperform the polls. But in the primary polls this year for the Republicans, Trump underperformed like in 10 out of 12 polls. He didn't overperform any polls. I don't know if that's any indication, but I can remain guardedly hopeful. Now, the economy, you said that Biden and Harris sucked on the economy. One measure I've read of how bad a president is how many years it takes to undo the damage they did in the next administration. And I feel like Biden's getting tarred with Trump's brush, that the world economy was in a shambles post-COVID. You saw inflation every place. And I know everybody, so what if America did a better job of taming inflation than any other industrialized country, it doesn't matter if Fox News continues to tell people that it's all Biden's fault and the economy sucks. And one last thing is just, Trump is such a piece of shit, just such a wreck of a human, and that it would sadden me to see him get another 4 years.
Do you know him?
Just to point out, just to jump in real quick, Rick is right. Trump is a dumpster fire based on the fact the fact that he's been part of more than 4,000 plus cases.
Lawsuit.
That's before
4,900.
Yeah, that's before he even went into office. He's actually propagated white supremacist talking points via Twitter and actually said them live. He's currently saying them now. He's also been found liable of rape, or what the judge has said is rape. He also has 34 felony counts. But take that out. One thing that we started off with, and Adam, this is a direct response to what you were just talking about in both your responses. You had started off talking about, Kamala Harris is an empty shell. Kamala Harris doesn't put in anything on the bone. I'm paying so much more for groceries at this moment. Well, let's actually put context behind what you're talking about. Right now, Trump has no policies. Right now, the economists say that Kamala Harris's plan will add 1.7 trillion to the actual national debt. That's what the economists say. We aren't okay with that. However, but those same economists that we trust on that 1.7 trillion has said that Donald Trump's plans will add more than 5.6 trillion to the national debt. So if we're talking about economy and numbers, and we're talking about looking forward, because we cannot just turn around and say, hey, I paid only this amount of money for eggs, even though that was a big ad where JD Vance lied and stood in front of a picture where he's saying, well, eggs are $4. Well, dude, you're holding 24 eggs, a basket of 24 eggs. And right behind you, it says 12 eggs for $2. So to lie like that blatantly is just ridiculous. But getting back to my point, and I digress on that. When we're talking about economy and where we're going forward, right now, Kamala Harris's plans look better for the economy. But what you're speaking about, Adam, is perception and the narrative that is constantly pushed out there. And because we have those economic measures that are actually coming in that are really high and showing that what you're saying is untrue, and a lot of people are actually seeing these things as a fact, that's why right now she's catching him on the economy. Yes, Trump leads in the polls on the economy, but Kamala Harris has closed that gap. When we talk about black men and then going for Kamala Harris or going for Donald Trump and so on and so forth, we're still talking about 80% of the African-American community is actually backing Kamala Harris. So we're looking at roughly about 12 to 15% that are now backing Trump, which is higher than any Republican before, but it falls in line with everything else that our data is telling us, because there is a huge gender gap split, which we're not adding context to and talking about. Where's that gender gap split is where more men are going towards Donald Trump of every race. That is not just an idea and a thing where it's all black men are. No, all men are. It's a gender gap, and it's happening that way. Why is that happening? It's because we still live in a patriarchy. We are not in a equal society where women and men are on an equal playing field. Women are judged at a different level than men are judged. And even in our religious views, even in religious texts, men are given the benefit of the doubt, seen as kings. We aren't looking at queens. We're looking at kings. God is always seen as a male figure. Jesus, all these characters are all part of the parent.
Can I respond to this?
Yeah, I have two quick things. I have two quick things before Adam goes. One, Adam, your hair is freaking amazing. You've got great hair. I'm very jealous.
Thank you.
Two, a quick thing is both candidates, when they become president, both have economic plans or the lack of plans, both are going to overspend revenue by trillions of dollars, but we might as well get some good shit out of it. At least with Harris, we'll get some goodies. With Trump,
here's the better
go to rich motherfuckers.
Here is the big question then, because honestly, again, if we go back to the economy, one individual is actually constantly badgered and said that she's never putting anything on her plans. She's never actually putting out any plans. Oh, she's an empty shell. What are Donald Trump's plans? And the ones that are out there currently, they said are going to add $5.6 trillion to the deficit, which is more than what Kamala Harris's plans are. So, Adam, why do you think Donald Trump is better for the economy? And then we'll get to, since I was going to go through everything, since I'm talking last, trying to cover everything. We'll get to the national security piece in a little bit. But why do you think he's better on the economy when he hasn't put anything other than tariffs on the table?
Because I look at what Donald Trump did when he was in office. I look at inflation when he was in office. I look at grocery prices, gas prices, and house prices, and I compare it what happened under the Biden-Harris administration. If I can just respond for 1 second to
just real quick, just to clarify my question, because you went on the we're going to reminisce over things that we love. No, I'm talking about plans moving forward. We cannot go back to where we were. What he did in office, he dropped off the cliff because remember, COVID came into play and that was on his watch. So inflation was due to COVID. So we cannot just say, well, inflation was Kamala Harris's fault. No, we're giving the benefit of the doubt to Trump. So what I'm wanting to know from you is what plans moving forward, because we can't go back.
Okay, I'll respond. I do not look at politicians and base my decisions on what they say. I base them on what they do. And when I look at the policies under Trump, which was a historically low African American and Hispanic employment rate,
it's
low inflation, and he accelerated a vaccine that saved many millions of lives. Now, when I look at the policies under the Trump administration and the impact that it had on me economically, it's not even a question. Now, you mentioned experts say that Trump is going to add more debt. Okay. Those experts are from the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. They are notoriously and uniformly liberal. As such, I do not give any credibility to their study. You talk about how what I'm arguing is based on perception and not reality. Is it perception that I spent over $12,000 on groceries last year?
You haven't given me a plan. You've given me all this stuff.
Is it perception that I spent over $1,500 on gas, and with the salary I make, having absolutely struggling?
What policy?
I can't get married and certainly can't have a child because the amount of money that I've spent. Now, you talk about the patriarchy. Women and men are not equal. Women are entering into the workforce, and particularly at jobs in the legal and medical profession, at a rate exceeding men. And in fact, they do get equal pay for.
No, they don't. That's factually wrong.
At the end of the day, when I look at Harris, I look at her interviews, I look at her convention speech, I look at how she's flip-flopped on nearly every single issue, from defunding the police to fracking. I do not trust her. I do not see any specificity in her policies. What I see is dishonesty and all style and no substance. And at the end of the day, I'm going to go into the ballot box and vote because I spent over $12,000 on groceries for me and my girlfriend and over $1,500 on gas. And I can't afford a house because they're so ridiculously expensive. And when I look at the way I was expending money under Trump versus Harris, my wallet's bigger under Trump. And that's why I'm voting for Trump.
Adam, are you shopping at premium grocery stores?
Never.
I shop at Kroger. Is Kroger a premium grocery store? I think it's average.
So the Wall Street Journal, Wharton says 5.6. The Wall Street Journal, Richard Rubin, Wall Street Journal is conservative. I don't know about the individual reporter, says 7.5 trillion.
But you're talking about Richard Rubin. You're not talking about the Wall Street Journal.
I don't know where
I
he
legitimately asked you a specific question. You never answered it. You gave me a bunch of fluff. You gave me a bunch of, oh, well, Kamala Harris is going to do this. Kamala Harris is going to do that. Well, blah, 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 blah. You didn't give me a policy of anything. I pointed out the only thing that Donald Trump keeps ranting and raving about is tariffs.
You want to know why?
This is what these economists are actually pointing out. But you went down some whole road because you, again.
No, I didn't go down a road.
No, Adam, here's my question again. Give me a policy position that Donald Trump is espousing today to work on what you're complaining about. Kamala Harris has. You
So
don't give me the fluff.
You're trying to frame the narrative in a way that best suits you. But I told you, and I answered your question. I said, I do not listen to what politicians say about their policies. Remember George H.W. Bush, read my lips, no new taxes. I look at what they do.
Okay,
so I have a record of what Trump did and what Biden Harris did, and there's no comparison.
So again, you don't listen to what they say, but you're holding Kamala Harris accountable for what she says. You're trying to say that, oh, well, we have a record of what Donald Trump did. Well, what Donald Trump did was drive a good economy off a cliff. We lost more jobs.
No, he didn't.
We actually tanked the economy because of him.
No, that was because of the coronavirus.
That's because of the coronavirus. But you're giving him the benefit of the doubt because of the coronavirus, but you're not giving Biden the benefit of the doubt because of the coronavirus.
No, what I'm doing is...
Adam, hold on. You're legitimately saying that inflation wasn't because of corona, even though factually we've proven that it was. You're saying that the jobs that Biden brought back were just COVID lost. Well, who lost those jobs? So what we cannot do this. That's why I'm saying, and I'm asking you now, what is his plan moving forward?
Now, what I'm doing is, I am speaking.
Hold on. If you can't give me a plan, because this man, just as he stated at the debate, he has a concept of a plan that he's been working on since he went in office since 2016. He has no plan.
Because
other than tariffs.
Number one, I do not believe what politicians on either side say during an election season. And number two, I have the ability to look at the actual evidence of his administration versus Harrison Trump's, and there's no comparison because I am speaking not as an analyst. I am speaking as a voter. And as a voter, I was wealthier under Donald Trump than I am under Kamala Harris. And I have struggled economically because of inflation. I have struggled seriously because of inflation. And I am not happy with the way that the border has not been secured. And I am not happy with the way we are not respected by nations around the world.
Do you realize that inflation is a global issue?
I understand what is in my wallet, and so will every other voter, and that's why Trump will win.
So what you're doing is actually pigeonholing it to a perception of a negative idea of what the world is.
You look at my bank account and you tell me that's a perception. You look at my bank account and tell me that's a perception.
Just to point out, in terms of unemployment, it's lower under the Biden-Harris team than it was up under Trump. If you look up under minority unemployment, it's lower up under Biden-Harris. GDP is higher up under Biden-Harris. Stock market is higher up under Biden-Harris. Drilling and all energy put out higher up under Biden-Harris.
Toby, voters don't care about that. The voters care about their individual situation. And I'm telling you, mine is 10 times worse under Biden-Harris.
No.
Yes, it is. I can give you my bank account.
Let me finish. Things are actually better now, but the constant drumbeat of telling them everything is bad is the problem.
Are they better for me?
Are they better for me?
No, that's not the question I asked. Are they better for me?
You just asked me, are they better for me?
The answer is a categorical no, and that's why I'm voting for Trump.
Are they better for me?
I have no idea.
Are they better for everybody
Voters
else?
don't care about statistics and studies from experts. They care about what they can put on their table, whether they can go on a vacation, buy a car, buy a house. I can't
Again,
do that under
again,
this
Adam,
administration because of
Adam,
inflation.
I'd
It's
like to
the
ask you
reason
a
I
question.
asked, what is his policy moving forward? We can't go back to $1.67 gas.
I don't care what he
doesn't work.
says. I care what he does, and I have a record of what he
He
did.
doesn't.
That's a better
he doesn't-
source for an
It-
honest
The last
evaluation.
time he was in office, the economy dropped off the cliff.
Was I wealthier under Trump than
You
under
guys are
Biden
going
and Harris?
around in
Yes.
circles. Let's
Yeah,
have some.
yeah,
And that's
agree.
why I'm voting for
I
Trump.
agree we're
And
going
so
around
will other
in
voters.
Honestly,
Let's
right now, if you look at the
Sasha have
polling,
something to say.
there's actually 48.6% for Kamala Harris, 45.9% for Donald Trump.
National
So right
polls
now-
are irrelevant. Trump is leading, and Trump is going to
No,
win for the
no,
exact
no.
reason that I said.
Adam,
People are
this
struggling
is
financially.
why- This is why
What
you're
Sasha-
unable
what is-
to listen.
Sasha
to
has a new
anything
point
that
to
Yeah,
say.
Sasha had a
Let's
question.
do a new
Sasha had a question.
I'm listening to my financial situation more than I am statistics and I would say your fluff.
Adam,
Let
let me ask
Sasha
you one
talk.
thing. If you're doing shopping at Kroger, have you ever looked at the stock price of Kroger and their profitability? Would you like to take a look? And then you will understand what is inflation, why is there inflation, or so on.
Sasha, half of the time I shop at Aldi's. I don't know if you know what Aldi's is, but Aldi's is like a discount.
It's a German supermarket chain. I know that. They're very
My point is that voters are going to vote based on their individual circumstance, and voters across the country have been suffering.
But
with gas
this is
prices.
so childish situation. If you look at Kroger stock and if you look at their profitability, this is why they're so profitable. They're doing so well for their stockholders because they're able to charge people like you whatever they need to create profit. Nothing to do with Kamala or Biden or Trump or George Bush or Franklin.
Why was I paying 67% of what I'm paying in the last 3 years under Trump's administration?
So you can make the Kroger shareholders getting good dividends. That's why it's nothing to do with Harris or Trump or anybody else. Just use your brain.
Well, then if it has nothing to do with Harris or Trump, then what's the difference between the two?
There's no difference.
There's
Okay.
No difference.
There's a big difference, and I can explain that.
Well, I would say, Sasha, you're right about that to an extent, because one of the reasons that Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney have said they're voting for Trump is because
They're not.
there's an elite political class that likes to protect itself. There's an elite
voting
political
for
class
He just
and
misspoke. He just
that
misspoke.
likes to protect its little club. And that's why they're voting against them. And that's what goes to support Sasha's point that there really isn't that much difference between the Democrat and the Republican elite. And I agree with that.
I've said that for a long time. And everything,
But I'm still voting based on my wallet. And so are Americans. And that's why Trump will win.
This whole hour, we've been talking about two different things, and it keeps getting confused, which is fine. One is what people should do, and people shouldn't vote for Trump, who's a piece of crap and an incompetent bastard, but 45% of the population disagrees with me, and yeah, they will vote for him. So we're talking about what people should do versus what people will do. And freaking, you turn on Fox News and they're getting a whole, as everybody, I mean, it's crazy. Like, I keep thinking, every time I turn on Fox News, I keep thinking they won't bullshit me. At some point, they have to, not be full of shit. But every time I turn them on, 4 out of 5 times, they're telling me bullshit.
Well, why do you watch Fox News? They're totally biased.
Because I watch MSNBC. I know I'm getting liberal brainwashed there by the truth for the most part, but still I have to turn on Fox to see what they're up to, and I'm constantly shocked.
Rick, they're both terrible. They're both terrible.
They're both biased.
So CNN, everybody's terrible. Fox is the worst of the three because it is the least truthful.
What is your evidence for that position?
They're all biased and everything, but
what is your evidence for that position?
I triangulate around. And I read Drudge now. Drudge is a decent aggregator since
Drudge has gotten terrible. The same liberal bias.
No,
guys,
Like,
wait a
what are
sec.
you gonna freaking do?
But I agree with you. Fox is bad. I do agree with you.
You are both missing wonderful channel by the name Russia Today. From Russia Today, you will have a truthful information about what's happening in the United States, around the world, everything. This is a must. But I don't think that it's being now in the United States, because in Canada it's forbidden, in most European countries as well.
I'm not sure
I
that I
don't
have
know.
to look and see if I can find
You know,
that.
when it comes to Russia and Ukraine, you know what really saddens me?
Yeah.
That people are losing their lives. It is completely. It is such
Adam, that's irrelevant. In Second World War, a lot of lives were lost.
right, but there has to be a solution.
There were no solution. One side must defeat the other one. That's the only solution, Adam.
Well, it
wake
depends
up.
on how you
Wake
define defeat, but I don't really care
No,
about who
no,
wins or
no,
loses.
no,
I care
no.
that we end this tragic loss of lives and get this situation
No,
resolved
until
with
one
some
side will
compromise.
soundly defeat the other one once and for all. Same thing with Israel. Israel must defeat all its enemies once and for all. There is no peaceful solution whatsoever.
So if there's no difference
You
between
know what
having
makes me
problem.
really upset about these two wars? I'll tell you what. In all this horrible, United Nations, whenever they put a question to vote, Ukrainian delegation always votes against Israel. Always, 100% of the time, they are voting against Israel. And in this war, they are fighting the same enemy, because Russia is fighting Ukraine, and Russia is behind Iran and all its proxies and all the other idiots. So naturally, Ukraine and Israel could forge incredible alliance, because one side has something what the other side lacks. Ukraine, they just got recently the F-16s, I think 9 or 10 pieces. Israel has hundreds of F-35. So if they would cooperate, then Ukraine would long time ago would have F-35, and Russia would end the war instantly. Now Israel has wonderful systems, anti-ballistic systems, whether it's Iron Dome, they have the other even more sophisticated systems. So Ukraine has almost nothing of that. Some Patriots here and there. So even here they could cooperate. They could cooperate on intelligence. They could cooperate in so many ways. Ukraine now is developing its own ballistic missiles. Actually, it's very funny. It's a new weapon. It's a combination of the ballistic missile and a drone at the same package. And it can fly up to 500 kilometers, and it has very, very strong the devices that can ruin quite handsomely many targets. And Russians don't have defense against that. The only thing is Ukraine has to develop and produce more and more of these weapons. Russia is taking 8 months to get from a little village of Avdiivka to now they got this village of Vuhledar. It's 60 kilometers distance. They were working for 8 months to get from here to there, losing 1,200 and more people a day. What are idiots? Complete idiots, nothing more than that. But Ukraine got into Kursk region of Russia. In a matter of 3 weeks, they acquired just as much territory as Russians did with all their tanks and artillery and everything else in 8 months. So what Israel is doing now to Hamas and Hezbollah and soon to Iran, it's incredible, masterful strikes, and Ukraine could learn something from that and have some of it. And this is beyond my comprehension, how Ukrainians are so naive and stupid.
Right. In terms of numbers, Ukraine is a much bigger tragedy than Israel, in that Ukraine has chewed up 500,000 people, maybe more, killed and wounded. Israel loses 1,500. It's bad, but it's gone on for a
No,
year.
no, no, no.
Ukraine.
It's completely, you're mixing up. It's not the numbers, it's how they lost. Ukraine was losing their people defending their country against invaders. And of course, in this case, you are losing. Unless you're prepared to give up, to resign, unconditional capitulation, that's another option. They could have done it. They decided no, they want to fight. And when you fight, you're losing people. Israel did not choose on October 7th whether to fight or give up or anything. There was no choice. They were slaughtered by Hamas without mercy, raping their women, killing their babies. This is completely different. I strongly disagree with you, Rick.
Okay, but let's talk about the size of the wars. Ukraine, 2.5 years. Israel right now, a year. And we can hope that the Israeli wars against Hezbollah, against Hamas, can be over sooner than Ukraine can be over, because you don't think so? You think it's just going to
I
keep
don't think
rolling?
so. I'll tell you why. If there wouldn't be for hostages held by Hamas, the war would, and the stupid United States position that you should not escalate, or you should do this and that. The war with Hamas would be over in 3-4 weeks. The Hezbollah would be wiped out at about the same time. Iran would be already wiped out just as well, because once you liquidate Hamas and Hezbollah, Iran has nothing to fight with. There is no fight against Iran. It's a backward country that could be defeated very easily. And
That's true.
you know what? Israel until October 7th last year, Israel, they could have and they should have probably do something about Iran, because they are threatening to create the nuclear weapons and so on, which would be horrendous implication for Israel. But it was never really a situation that all of a sudden you get up in the morning and say, oh, let's go and defeat Iran. It's never happened like that. There must be a chain of events that would lead to that. And that chain of events happened right now. Right now, Israel not only has inclination, it has an appetite for war. There is a time for war. There is a time for peace. Right now for Israel is a time for war. Israel has to finish all the Mid-Eastern conflict once and for all. The children and grandchildren of Hezbollah and Hamas, they have to tell their children and grandchildren, never, ever mess up with Israel. Never attack Jews. That's what's happened when we did so.
I agree with that. I think
So I have a question for
right.
both. I have a question for both of you. So Iran has 10 times as many people as Israel. How does Israel? I know they beat big countries before, but how do you knock them out with 10 times the population?
When 5 Arab countries invaded Israel in 1948, Israel had 900,000 people, and Arab countries has 100 million people. And what's happened in that war? Israel defeated all these 5 countries, and it's happened one more time in 56 and in 67 and in 72, and every time Israel, being much smaller country, defeated. And that was the time which I'm talking about, 1948, but Israel was invaded and they were fighting for their lives. Right now, Israel, if, for example, 6 days war, oh my God, there are so many Arab countries against Israel, so on. If today,
I'm asking what happened. Like, did they just blow up all their planes and tanks on the ground?
No, they don't need their planes and tanks. Let them have them. They will defeat. First of all, the nuclear program will be done and over with. Second, the oil refineries, they will all destroy it, and there will be no more economy for Iran. And just in case, maybe they should destroy the only sea facilities that can provide the gas terminals, oil terminals, or just to destroy it completely. And that's all. And it can happen within I don't know 3.5 hours, and that's all done.
All right, so let me ask you this. For ever since the Shah fell, people are saying, well, this regime is on the it's never fallen. It's gone for what, 46 years or something. If Israel did what you say they could do and defeated Iran, would that lead to the fall of the regime?
Of course, there will be no regime. There will be no nothing. They will have to get on their knees and ask the United States and France and England and Israel and Russia, whoever there is, to help. Beg them, please help us. We are stupid idiots. We decided to fight with Israel, and look at what's happened.
That sounds overly optimistic.
Sasha, that sounds good in theory, but
It is a bit optimistic. Yes.
Didn't one of the Shahs fall in like the 80s and 90s, and Iran is still a very much of a kind of like a dictatorship, and all along
It's run by the Ayatollah.
Oh, wait a second. You don't remember Iraq-Iran war in the 80s?
In the 80s.
There was already Ayatollah and all those.
But they fell, and then they
And do
still
you remember
there.
pictures when there were thousands of Iranian soldiers with one leg, one with any legs, and so on? They
Well,
were
Sasha,
demolished by Iraq, which was not the biggest, strongest army in the world.
Sasha, one of the problems is that the United States deposed Saddam Hussein. We should have kept Saddam Hussein in power because Saddam Hussein was containing Iran. The fact that we went in there and destabilized Iraq empowered Iran, and that was a stupid decision by the United States.
But you're talking about political decision. That's not a military decision. It's a political decision.
Well, I'm saying as a practical reality.
In reality, the United States could have destroyed both Iraq and Iran in about simultaneously.
But Iraq was containing Iran. I would have rather had Saddam Hussein in power than what we have now.
Here's a question to tie into that, though. Because, yes, the removal of Saddam Hussein did create a power vacuum and did create a problem.
Agreed.
Gaddafi is a similar situation.
Agreed.
What happens with the toppling of Iran? Is that going to create another power vacuum where we create another destabilizing situation? Because right now, the Lebanese war, the Israel-Lebanon situation has happened multiple times over 50 so years.
Right.
And one of the past reasons why there was such an issue is because Israel ended up more so occupying Lebanon, creating another issue in that region. So what's going to happen with these? My concern is what will happen with, now that the next chain in command in Hezbollah was just taken out today. There is another. So what happens with Iran? I mean, just where does this vacuum go? Where do we?
I got your question. Okay, number one, Israel wants to very carefully disarm and not even if it's not liquidate, but just to make Hezbollah even kind of a force by name only, so they will be completely unable to do anything militarily against Israel. Number one. Number two, they're not going to stay in Lebanon for long. Once they will finish Hezbollah, they don't need Lebanon. They will move out and let Lebanese people to decide who would be the next government, how they will rule, and so on. Number three, about Iran. The majority of people in Iran, they hate that regime, the Ayatollah, and everything else. Of course, they're scared because of the internal police and all kind of things. But that will be changed very quickly once Israel will do its job. There will be no more Ayatollah, there will be nothing really left. And it will be happening so quickly that Iranian people will seize power, and they're very intelligent, highly educated people. and they can live very well without this regime at all, same as they lived during the Shah time. Before 1979, it was very civilized, forward society, much more than many Arab countries, by the way. But that's what's happened when Ayatollah came to power. They moved backwards all the time, and now they're not doing very well. And Israel will just unleash the power which will be seized by Iranian people.
So I have a question for Adam and Sasha.
Yes.
If we kept a better leash on the reason the Shah got deposed, he sucked because he used his secret police to oppress his people. If we'd gone to the Shah 10 years before and said, you got to cool it with the secret police or we're going to pull support. And if we'd gone to Saddam Hussein, who used to be our friend, and said, you got to quit killing hundreds of thousands of your people, and your sons have to quit raping and murdering, would that have worked? Would they have listened?
No, I think the mistake with the Shah, and I'm not an expert in this area, but you cannot go into a country and install a leader in a country the way that they did. Okay, that is going to create so much resentment and hatred. That's not the solution. The solution is to do what is in the self-interest of those countries. So, meaning that Iran, and at the time Iraq, needs to know that if they attack Israel, they will be demolished, eliminated. So there has to be a built-in deterrence whereby they know if they engage in any forward action, it will be met with force that will be overwhelming. Deterrence is the answer to contain these countries because in their self-interest is preservation. Okay.
Preservation, but really quickly, Adam, preservation is in the self-interest of any country, anybody in the world and everything. But sometimes that preservation and the self-interest is also our own interest and everything, because there is no doubt that there are countries, and I'll name two of them, like Uganda, that we kept Idi Amin in because we felt that there was some self-interest in terms of some of the resources that were available to us, and definitely Noriega down there in the country that he was at and everything. So I'm wondering, do we sometimes are so interested in our own self-interest and our own selfish interest as well? Because there's no doubt.
Yes, and that's why we went into Vietnam, and that's why we went into Iraq, because it was in our financial interest, and I think that was completely wrong. I think what we need to do is we need a strong Israel, because a strong Israel is the deterrent. Okay, if these countries hate Israel, I'll tell you one thing they're going to hate more than that: their own extinction. So that's why they have to know that if they attack, they will be eliminated.
Well, here's actually a better question, and I mean, instead of thinking that it's the strong arm that I don't know if that's the solution in that area more so than, for example, a deterrence that I think some people actually really disagree with, can't stand, so on and so forth. But it actually has been a deterrence for one powerful nation not going after particular nations because they're a part of NATO. So I'm not an advocate for everything that NATO does. I think NATO has problems, and I think NATO can be a decent solution if done correctly. And it has stopped Russia or Putin from going into particular areas because of that force of NATO. And honestly, NATO's Article 11 or Article, I can't remember the number. The only time that was actually used was when we were hit in 9/11. So that could be a deterrent situation, creating a solution for those nations to create around that, including Israel, having them at the table as well as the Palestinian people, because that's an issue within itself, including those Muslim countries that are there from your Saudi Arabia, your Qatar, your Iran, Iraq, and so on and so forth, rather than creating another vacuum situation. Because creating that vacuum, what happened in Afghanistan, that right there was a huge vacuum. When that deal got signed and the Taliban took over that nation, that's a huge vacuum and another powder keg. So how do we create a situation there? I think that's the answer, because just being that strong nation and we're going to rah-rah against you, there are some individuals, some people that creates a terrorist haven for that we're going to attack this nation regardless. It doesn't matter. So that's why I'm saying there's got to be some type of financial situation, some type of coalition, something where you attack one, you attack all type deterrence.
Right. Well, one of the things is this: when it comes to Qatar, Qatar is an extremely wealthy country because the Muslims in Qatar are interested in making lots of money. In places like Iran, they are more interested in ideology and motivated by religion and culture. That's what makes it difficult. So with those countries, the best way to deal with them, in my opinion, is not to attack them, but it is to make sure that there is no uncertainty about the fact that if they attack Israel, they will be met by force that will make their self-preservation
What you're saying, Adam, get ready to wrap up in very short.
I've got to run too because I have to go teach, guys. But good discussion.
No, I had a
one
question
more
Adam,
question before you go. One more question before you go.
And everything, Adam.
Hold on.
I know you got to go teach and everything, but just really quickly, what is your notion? Because one of the things I was going to get to on this show, we can bring it up on Thursday as well. Even though I think we've got a guest on Thursday that comes from the peace community, and know that Sasha's not the same person. It's a gentleman and everything along those lines. But I was just wondering your thoughts around this notion of the Hurricane Helene. They're saying that some of the educated voters will not be coming to vote because it's going to be more difficult for them, and they're saying that that's going to impact more the Trump voters than it will the college-educated voters from, say, Asheville and everything. So
that's a shame. We want to make it as easy as possible for everyone on both sides to vote. So that's not a good situation.
All right, question for you and Sasha. Quick, in 50 years, will any of this Mideast stuff be cleaned up? Will modernity be more attractive?
Well,
more the same, Rick. More the same.
Russia and Ukraine, yes, it will be. Adam, I have a bad news for you. Putin just celebrated his 72nd birthday. And in fact, it's well known that he's 74, not 72. But in 15 years...
He looks so young.
He looks very young, and he feels very young, and he acts very young, except that in 15 years, he will be 89. And most likely, you know what's happened? He might be dead by that time. And if that's the case, there will be no more conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Because
Agreed.
All this war happened because of the one stupid murderer, and it's his name, Putin.
Well, we can disagree on Mr. Putin, but I agree with you that practically speaking, when he passes away, things are definitely going to change. But I would love to continue this, but I've got to go teach a class at 6. Thank you, guys. Good discussion.
Appreciate
Bye-bye.
it.
Have a great day, guys.
We've only got about 2 minutes to go, so if anybody's got any final thoughts or final thing that you want to add, this would be the time to do that.
I think, Rick, that question that you asked. Oh, I was just going to say, Rick, I think the question that you asked is a great question. Will things change in 50 years? And I think, honestly, we're on the precipice if we do things differently, because it has repeated for the past 50 years. There was war, time of peace, war, time of peace. And that's been a pattern if you look at the history between that region. At this moment, I think that we can, and that's why I was saying, we got to negotiate and come up with some type of solution between the countries themselves and allow for them to have some type of coalition like a NATO for themselves and work through that. Just something different besides, hey, I'm the strong guy. I've got all the bombs. Oh, well, now you bomb me. Now I got to bomb you. Now we got this repeated cycle.
I just think the future has so much cool stuff that that if you just aren't dead from being blown up, there's a bunch that maybe people would not want to be dead because the future's so awesome.
That could be interesting, but we have that awesome future and everything, because I know you're a big fan of AI and actually one of the winners of the Nobel Prize was an AI pioneer. So maybe AI is going to solve some of these issues, because I know you brought it up several times, so maybe it can even solve the war issues and everything. I mean, AI has been around for a while, because Jacoby wasn't AI part of war games. I mean, it was an early version of AI, but it was somewhat an AI version in that old movie from the 80s and 90s, but it was like an early version of what is now considered AI.
Yeah, I mean, but that was a movie version of AI. But
Rick, I've been waiting to. I meant to tell you yesterday because I wanted to tell you for a while. Have you seen the new show on HBO, The Franchise?
I started watching it last night, and it's freaking awesome. But I have to wait because my wife is out of town, and I have to watch it with her. So we've got that deal, right? But I'm very excited. It's terrific.
Oh, it's awesome! And you were the first person to thought of.
It's behind the scenes during the making of a Marvel type superhero movie, and it's one of those deals where everybody's kind of half an asshole, and you get to see everybody just doing, and I'm sure it I'm psyched. I'm totally psyched for it.
Like I said, it is you, Rick. Like I said, when I started watching, I was like, hey, I know somebody who does this.
Yeah, no, my wife has to. I may make her fly home early so we can watch some TV. I've been watching Bad Monkey, which is, and again, like that's another show I can't watch because she's out of town.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean,
well, we're gonna have to get ready to get out here because the other show has just started, so I'm gonna end the stream, but y'all can talk about it afterwards and everything.
Oh, that's okay. I gotta go too. I gotta, I don't get anything done. I gotta feed the dogs. I gotta freaking. I hadn't taken a bath in a week because my wife's out of town.
You need to do that.
Okay. Bye.